This is EntreEd Talk, the podcast for entrepreneurial educators by entrepreneurial educators. We are your hosts, Toi Hirschman and
Amber Ravenscroft. This podcast is created by the National Consortium for Entrepreneurship Education, or EntreEd for short.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to EntreEd Talk podcast. We are so delighted today to have Aaron Schorn with us. Aaron Schorn works at Nalu Kai Academy and Hawaii Preparatory Academy in Hawaii. At Nalu Kai, Aaron creates and implements curriculum, hustles to find mentors, and teaches digital storytelling. Outside of Nalu Kai, he is focused on creating student-centered systems to authentically tell the story of learning communities. At Hawaii Preparatory Academy, Aaron is the K-12 Capstone Coordinator and teaches digital journalism and social entrepreneurship courses that are centered around product-based learning, the lean startup methodology, project management, and building digital brands. The classes are supported by mentors across industries working directly with students on their products. Aaron's professional background is in international business, digital storytelling, operations management, UX, UI, and content creation. Awesome. Aaron, welcome. We're so excited to have you today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Well, we always like to get started by having our guests give us sort of a rundown of their own entrepreneurial journey. You have quite a background, so I'm sure that I'm excited to hear the different ways that you've combined all of your background into what you're doing now. So how did you get to where you are today, and what were some of your aspirations as a student?
Well, I grew up in Lesotho in Southern Africa. My parents are both educators. My dad worked for UNESCO and met my mom, who started a primary school in Swaziland. And so I think they were both kind of educational entrepreneurs, and I think that's what drew them together. And being that kind of third culture kid, kind of living that global citizenship life at such a young age has really defined, kind of my entrepreneurial journey and who I am as a person too. And, I was almost like a military brat, except my dad was in international development. And so before college, I'd been to over a dozen schools, between K and 12. And that kind of forces you to have your pitch ready at all times. And it forces you to, gain skills of empathy and social and emotional learning that are a core part of what I teach in entrepreneurship too. And kind of my journey through international development in DC and abroad, working in Haifa, where I met my wife, and Northern Israel, back to DC and to Hawaii has been one kind of step towards entrepreneurship, kind of over and over again.
This is my favorite part of the podcast. Because when we don't receive a bio that has any inkling of what was just explored, and I'm just like, I wish everyone could see our faces, because Toi and I simultaneously at the same time we're like, what? That's awesome. Okay.
That background alone had to inform so many things. That's incredible. Over 12 schools before college.
Right. Which was not fun, right? But but at the same time allowed me to kind of figure out who I am, allowed me to struggle in terms of self-identity and self-confidence, and all of those pieces built, kind of the tapestry, if you will, of who I am today. And that really informs my teaching. That really informs how I connect with youth, and why I think I'm good at connecting with youth too.
That's awesome. I think a big thing for me, and something that we always try to address through a lens of entrepreneurship, is this idea of cultural competencies, especially with students who often don't get to see the world. And so I was wondering if you've seen, and this is completely off script already, I was wondering if you've seen any of that in Hawaii, because it is an island. Do you have to expand global awareness, and has that really helped you with that piece?
I think so. I think the history of Hawaii is about immigration and about multiculturalism as well, and about colonization, right? All of the things that we think about in the context of America or Canada or New Zealand or much of the world, where an indigenous population has been colonized, where different populations have been brought in Hawaii's case, Japanese, Filipino, Portuguese, and others. And that informs the culture of this island, or these islands. But there's such a core part of Hawaiian knowledge and culture that informs and makes this place so powerful and so unique too. And it's something you kind of have to experience firsthand. And at the same time, at Hawaii Preparatory Academy, HPA, it's a day and boarding school. And half of that boarding population is international, with over 20 countries represented. So, from a storytelling perspective, that's like a dream to teach, right? You have someone from Kazakhstan, from Jamaica, from Nigeria, from South Korea and Japan, and you have them in a digital journalism class, or you have them in a math class or an entrepreneurship course. And there's so many ways in which they view the world, and there's so many ways in which they tell stories. And so I'm extremely fortunate, to work and live in a place like this.
Wow. I feel very boring right now. I feel like I'm a very boring person after.
I've looked at both your bios. You're doing incredible work as well. I mean, like from Appalachia to all over, I think it's interesting. I mean, there's this group that wants to innovate education and prepare students, not just for like the buzzwords, not just for deeper learning and 21st century skills, but like to be able to do, right? Like to be able to actually create things. And I would argue that much of education, even at amazing schools, does not do that. And so I think there's a group of us, and a lot of them you've interviewed and others across the world that want to make learning more student-centered, want to make it more agency-driven, want students to have outcomes and find their education relevant. And for me, when they find that, it's like a spark. And then it's our job as educators and facilitators and mentors to kind of fan that flame, right? So like, I'm going to show you what you can do when you learn the Adobe suite, right? You can learn Premiere and Photoshop and Audition, and then this is what you can create. There's an amazing educator, Ron Berger, who in his book, Ethics of Excellence, talks about artifacts of excellence, kind of showing students year after year the incredible things that past cohorts have created. And to me, that fits into what Mike Tomlin, the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, talks about, even though I'm a large Patriots fan. I really love Mike Tomlin's coaching philosophy. And he says the standard is the standard. The best is what we always strive for every single day. And I think that connects with youth in some pretty profound ways. See, now I'm going off script and taking this.
We agree with everything you just said. Also, Pittsburgh Steelers are my team. We were just at a game this past weekend, in fact. So yeah, they didn't win, but it's okay. But yeah, I mean, that's just, it's so true. And it's very, it's hard sometimes, I think, for Amber and I to even understand that we are a small group. I mean, this is not the norm, because we're around all of these awesome people like yourself that, that believe in that experiential learning and student-centered learning, and, and making the word you use was relevant that's probably my favorite word, making it relevant, because you see kids and teachers even so disengaged sometimes. And it's that old, adage, what do I need to learn this for? Well, to go to college and to get, that's irrelevant to me, And so that's so important that's part of students. It sounds like a lot of that is happening at HPA. And I was wondering if you could dive into that a little bit more and talk about the academy. And I mean, you talked about some of your student population, which is very diverse, really, really amazing. But maybe some of the projects and the things that the students do.
Yeah. I mean, HPA has had a history of experiential learning for a really long time, from its outdoor program to turtle tagging and marine bio research. So like there's this kind of fertile ground to work with, right? And so I think my journey started as webmaster at the school. We had to choose a web provider, which allowed me not to have to code. and allowed me to be able to create the site architecture and the website. But I couldn't do that without students. And so I created a 6-member student team. We met over lunch. They weren't getting paid. They weren't getting a credit. This was about truly if they wanted to be involved. And some brilliant, brilliant minds kind of joined me. Students that, I gave the title of, product director and director of brand and, someone that was looking at how we would store data and stuff like that. And we created basically what the website was for a number of years. That experience made me think about creating videography. We had amazing videography teachers. We had an incredible photography teacher. So there was a lot of capacity within students already because of the work that Ari Bernstein does as videography teacher and Patrick O'Leary does as photography teacher. And so that summer I formed a student team, and we took the 2 drones that we had up in our energy lab and we went across the island and shot some really beautiful video. And that had me go to the dean of academics and the head of school asking to teach a digital journalism class. And in the infancy of that class, it became, about growing the school's social media and kind of adding more content to the website. So what I did is I looked at all of the spaces in which students can engage in real world work. So admissions, advancement, the business office, Marcom, marketing and communications. These were now all platforms that I could lovingly hijack, right? And now students were building their digital portfolios or actually telling the story of a school in an uncliche way, which is really difficult in education. And so for me, it was if you build it, they will come in terms of this kind of learning. Showing these outcomes and then pairing them with the incredible things that were already happening in independent science research, marine biology, outdoor learning. And then that's just grown and grown and grown. And so, again, sorry, long roundabout answer, but I think that in order to do this, you have to find what makes your institution unique and what makes, whether you're in, West Virginia or Silicon Valley or Vietnam or HPA, what makes your space special? What capacities do you have? Is it a strong audiovisual department? Is it incredible writing? And then start there, because you have to sequence and scope and scaffold the skills that you're asking students to dive into when you start going into this project-based or product-based learning world, right? And you have to have faculty that are trained, or you have to train faculty as you dive into this space too. And I think that's what we're trying to do at HPA right now.
That is incredible. I love what you just said, because you said, find what makes your institute unique. That's such a powerful message, because so often schools they don't think about it that way. Like the way that you just spoke about how, okay, we have these great resources. We have these teachers who were really strong in different things. And then even the marketing of the school, just to think of your school in that way, like what are these things that we have right now that kids could take over? What could they build? What can they do? And just using what's there, that's a really powerful message. We try to, at EntreEd, we try to promote that same message. What are you already doing that you can connect to? So it's not this huge overhaul of the entire school or something completely new. It's just, let's find our strengths. And that's very entrepreneurial.
I think at the same time, this is not new.
Yeah.
The work of Dewey and Adams and old school apprenticeship, this has always existed. I just finished a master's in education, and I goofily said, James Dewey was, Dewey was writing this in or John Dewey, you can edit whatever.
No, we're gonna leave that in.
Right. But he was writing about this in the late 1800s. How has this not taken hold? And my professor was like, oh, you naive young man. Do you not understand the industrial education complex, right? Do you not understand the business of buying books and SATs and why classes are the way they are? And all we're talking about is modern day mentorship, is modern day apprenticeship, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the role of an educator is still vital. The role of building social and emotional learning, ethical and core technical skills is vital. but you need spaces where students find that relevancy, where they find purpose and passion, where they're able to interconnect them. And I would argue it shouldn't just be in a senior program.
Mhm.
It should be the identity of an institution, you know, from the bottom to the top.
Preach.
You know, there's like my daughter's in second grade right now. She loves learning. She's obsessed with it. Every day she's a sponge soaking it up. And somewhere in middle school that gets stolen from our children. Somewhere in middle school, that love and that agency and that ownership is gone. And for me, that's horrible. That creates an ecosystem that is for certain privileged people that know how to play that game, right? And everyone else gets kind of shoehorned into a different section. And, you know, it's really about equity and access and keeping that inspiration going throughout someone's life.
Toi, I'll give you this one comment.
I know.
I'm sorry, I'm talking
I'll
too
give
much
you
already.
one comment on that.
It was like it was meant to be. We talk about this all. At some point, I always say something about my kids' school, and yeah, I have a fourth grader and a first grader, and yes, that's exactly what happens. It gets sucked out, and it's sad sometimes to see, because they start in kindergarten and they're full of just wonder, and they want to play and they want to explore, and then just it seems like piece by piece we just keep chipping that away until middle school they're
worksheet by worksheet we steal it.
Yep. I'm gonna get kicked out. It's gonna be good, Amber, because I'm gonna get kicked out of my kid's school when the principal finally listens to the podcast.
I know, yeah. We're just gonna have to like avoid it. We'll
out of the PTO.
We'll make your voice sound different. We'll hide your name for like identity crisis. I love what you said about modern day mentorship, and I also recently graduated from a master's program, and I had similar thoughts on Dewey, and my professors were like, "Settle down, simmer down over there." Because I felt the exact same way. Can you talk a little bit? You're also the K-12 Capstone Director at HPA. And I was wondering if you could talk about that, because I think sometimes when people think Capstone, they think of a college degree. And Capstone is not something that I would even associate with K-12 based on my own education.
Sure.
So yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that experience at HPA, it would be great.
HPA is unique. Head of Director of Dean of Academics a couple of years ago, Martin Farrell, who's now in North Carolina, kind of put this concept into action, having capstones in 5th, 8th, and 12th at HPA. And I've only seen one other school in Milwaukee that's done this. I'm sure there's a bunch more. But they become a year of student-owned kind of learning, where the student in 5th, 8th, or 12th kind of drives what they're working on. And there's structure in 5th, 8th, and 12th. There's deliverables and milestones and outcomes. But at the end of the day, the kind of journey, the process, and the artifact or the product is driven by the student. And we have an amazing 5th grade teacher, Kristen Tarnas, who themes her capstone around bees, because she has access to hives. And it's a great kind of box for them to kind of jump out of, right? In 8th grade, they have themes as well. And in 12th grade at HPA, we have 10 kind of themed capstone courses, from biotechnology to social entrepreneurship, to agriculture and design, to possibly one of the coolest classes in the history of education based around Hawaiian culture and voyaging, where they go out on makali'i, a voyaging canoe. And that becomes kind of the center of their capstone experience. They find rules within that boat as they go on a journey.
Wow.
So I think the themes, it's not in a lot of capstone or senior X programs, it's purely kind of independent.
Yeah.
I think the themes are a nice kind of middle ground before our students, before some of our students kind of have the capacity to go into independent mode their senior year. And so much of my work as capstone coordinator is creating that scaffolding. How do we build kind of skill, knowledge, and both hard and soft, and capacity within 9, 10, and 11, so they're ready for a 12th grade capstone, 6 and 7, so they're ready for 8, and K4, so they're ready for 5. And my focus right now is mostly on the upper school, 9 through 12, because HB has done such an amazing job, K4 and 6, 7, getting people ready.
I mean, can't imagine, like, it just reflecting on what that experience would be like. I honestly, truly cannot, given my own experiences, picture what that is like.
Well, I think it's a blend right now. I mean, HPA is still a school that like a lot of others is determining their identity. You know, we offer a lot of AP classes, and so that's a different style of education, right? And so it's not like we're high tech high, right? It's not like we're an amazing Ted Dintersmith documentary about a school in San Diego that lives project-based learning. And I think that's good. I think that we are who we are. We, like I said earlier, we focus on what makes us unique. And a part of the capstone journey is figuring out what sticks and what works within our own learning communities too. I mean, I think the difficulty with independent schools is that they're still revenue model based. And so there's so many things that you take into account, right? Do APs drive an international student population?
I didn't even think about that. That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, there's a lot of different components here that that you have to take into account as you're building capstone programs. But I'm extremely fortunate. You know, we have a new head of school, Patrick Phillips, who's incredible, great upper school principal, a new dean of studies who understands the politics and assessment in the style of education, and Amy Cole, and kind of a progressive upper school principal in Chip Miller. And so I'm extremely supported in this role here. Now it's the outcomes of it, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. I just like watching Toi's face.
What's wrong with my face?
You just get so like in awe.
I get so excited when I hear this and because I just want, like, I want that, you know, I want that for my kids. And it's just, I'm sitting here thinking, cause it's all, you put it in terms of your life, and I'm sitting here thinking, man, if my child was going into 5th grade next year and had this B capstone project, which we've got bees all over the place in rural.
Honestly, yeah.
I mean, there's beehives is like a big thing right now. But I mean, I can't even imagine how much more excited he would be for school. You know, it's just to do those kinds of things. And it's so great that you have that support too from your administration team, because
I mean, there's few institutions where a capstone is a year-long course, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the schools I'm obsessed with, it's just like, 3 months in an English class, right? Like, I'm extremely fortunate that a part of a teacher's teaching line is one capstone for 10 teachers, right? So even when I'm like, oh, I wish the schedule had like 4-hour blocks where we could do more experiential learning. And then someone's like, well, what about all the other classes? Like, I have to be reminded at how unique structure is. And you going through a master's in ed program, that like frame factors of a school, that schema, like schedule, time, that all determines innovation in education, right? How am I supposed to do this in a 15-minute block versus I have 2 hours to work with students, or I have to go off-site to work with a mentor? But we're on the frontier. Like, how do we create legal agreements so that there's safety for students that are working with mentors virtually and in person? How do we look at intellectual property rights when someone's under 18? Like, what's cool is that there's other people doing this work, kind of helping us set precedent and create this stuff too.
Yeah, that's speaking of IP. I want to move to Nalukai Academy, because I was mind blown about the products that were coming out of this. So I'm not going to even try. I'll butcher it. Can you talk about what that is? And then we'll dive into some of the actual components of it.
I'll give you the what first. Nalu Kai, as it is now, is a 10-day boarding free entrepreneurship program for youth across Hawaii, across the Hawaii Islands. And they also get a free MacBook Pro. And the only thing they have to cover sometimes is travel. What has made us successful is our diversity, a split between public, private, and charter schools, socioeconomic diversity, racial diversity, and skills diversity, people that come in with different skill sets. We take a lot of Steve Blank and Bob Dorff and Eric Ries's lean startup methodology, which comes from Kanban, which comes from Japanese manufacturing in like the 80s and 90s. And then we do a ton of social and emotional learning. But what makes us powerful is the kind of the sense of place and culture that our cultural practitioners of Hawaiian descent bring into the program. And that allows students that are of Hawaiian descent but also aren't to understand what makes doing business and creating innovation in Hawaii look like. So many times people focus on the app, but the app is not going to end poverty. The app is not going to end the gap between rich and poor. The app is not going to end climate change. It's understanding the problem space, right? And then being able to kind of create within it. And we've really focused a lot on doing that. And a lot of the learning lessons from HPA have gone into Nalu Kai, and a ton of learning lessons from Nalu Kai have gone into my role at HPA too. And this is our 4th year of doing Nalu Kai. It was founded and inspired by Bubba Monsef, creator of Color Lovers and Creative Market, 2 digital marketplaces, who grew up here and wanted to create opportunity for youth to actually stay. Hawaii has a big brain drain problem, like a lot of regions of the US and the world, and trying to create intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs, that might want to leave, but also need to come back to kind of sustain this place too, was a huge vision of his. And it's been really, really cool growing it with our executive director, David Clark, this like otherworldly facilitator and social and emotional learning expert. Austin Stewart, guy that retired in his 30s when Twitch was bought by Amazon Web Services, and we've somehow gotten to get his time as our director of curriculum. Courtney Gussick, an incredible entrepreneur, May Somali, an otherworldly VC expert, and just mentor after mentor after mentor. And I think, outside of the success of diversity, having students work side by side over those 10 days with entrepreneurs, young and old, with cultural practitioners and innovative educators, has been a really cool model that I haven't seen anywhere else.
Wow. How do you choose the students who get to come? Is there do you do like a search, or do they have to come up with an idea first, or how does that work?
I mean, a core part of it is finding people where they live, right? Like looking at other institutions that build capacity within youth. And you talk to Ted Dintersmith, you talk to Josh Rapoon. Ted has kind of tilled this space and searched and found some incredible spaces around the world. And Josh has worked with him in the state of Hawaii. And so finding people that have networks, finding vocational programs, finding places that train students in videography, finding schools that don't have a lot of access to privilege, and searching for students that have, even in the face of that, kind of shined and done incredible work. And, places where you would stereotypically not look, we have had probably our best students. And that mix of public, private, and charter is definitely the secret to our success. There's incredible work happening in public schools across the state. Honaka'a High School, graphic design, Kealakehe, some of the coolest robotics and STEM work you're ever going to see. Molokai High School, just play Waipahu. Like, there is innovation happening left and right. And so we search for that. We reach out to those students, we video conference in, and then we have a pretty lengthy application. And from that application, we're looking at a lot of qualitative and quantitative things about a student. And we think about designers and leaders and project managers and communicators and implementers, people that have skills to do things. And that's how we kind of choose our cohort.
Wow. That's awesome.
I'm giving you long answers. I'm so sorry.
No. We want to know all of the answers. We want to know everything.
When you need punchlines, let me know and I can dive into it.
No, you've given us like 80. I'm curious because I come from a marketing background, and I'm like super interested in the entrepreneurship space now because of our work with Toi. And I've always been fascinated by tech, and it seems like Nalukai is the perfect blend of all three of those, like technology, entrepreneurship, and design. So could you walk us through like how they intersect, and what does a day in the life of a student look like at the academy?
I'll start with some language or lexicon we use. At Nalu Kai, we define entrepreneurship or an entrepreneur around someone that owns their education and owns their professional journey. Full stop. It's not tech. It's not high finance. It is being able to own that journey, right? And we give people methodologies and mindsets. We connect them with people that will be mentors for them long after those 10 days are over. But it's about telling someone and showing someone they belong. Like we do 10 days of pre-work, and I ended every single pre-work session with, you belong. You belong here. Because in previous cohorts, we had people that struggled to view themselves as entrepreneurs. But they were incredible product designers. They were incredible writers and communicators. And so it's opening entrepreneurship to not just STEM kids, but to humanities kids as well, right? And making them understand that when you have different skill sets and you put them on a team, that's how you build a product. That's how you make social change. You have different core capacities, and when you put them together and you teach them communication and relationships and empathy, then they're going to be able to do anything. I think all of those things intersect because that's how you create something. You need a designer, you need someone to pitch, you need someone to code out, you need someone to write, you need someone to market, you need someone that understands UX and UI, right? And you might need different people for different kinds of products.
It's real world.
It's real world, right? It's real world. You want to sustain this? We'll help you sustain this. We'll find people. You don't? Fantastic. All these learning lessons you can apply to being a doctor or a plumber. You don't have to own your own startup, right? Like take anything that you've learned at Nalu Kai or at HPA and apply it. Apply it to your nonprofit. Apply it to your activism, right? Like apply it to your political career. Maybe not that, but all the other things.
Pitching could be applied for sure. We're gonna just Toi, we're just gonna have to stop hosting PD sessions and just like play podcast episodes.
So because that's like I was getting chills, and it wasn't because it's cold here. It was like it was just. I mean, that's exactly. It's so simple. I guess maybe that's what makes it complicated, because it's how we work in the world, and even more so today, and even more so as we move forward into the future. Like we work on teams, we have to figure out what other people's strengths are, and that's to do that, to start that during your educational journey is incredible. I mean, that you're setting them up for success no matter what they do. And I knew I was going to love it, but I loved your definition. Amber, I think, chuckled at me a little bit, because we've been talking about defining entrepreneurship in a way that entrepreneurship word itself kind of trips people up sometimes, because you immediately go to our traditional thinking is that starting a business, you got to have, it's that starting that business, you have a small business or something,
right?
Marketing, business ed, financial literacy, those things. But I love that it's just owning your own professional journey, owning your own education. That's really impactful, because that's what it is.
HPA has a spring travel abroad program called Our World. And I went with a cohort of 7 students to Cuba on this kind of social entrepreneurship trip put together by Rustic Pathways. And looking at entrepreneurship in that lens, in a very non-capitalist lens, right, was really eye-opening for me to see what innovation and entrepreneurship looks like in a totally different region of the world, in a totally different structure. I think was really hard for our students too. And I also think it's always problematic to take people of privilege and bring them to a different region of the world and pretend that they're experts. But I thought that the trip, fought against that as best it could. But when you think about it in a non-commodified lens sometimes, or a non-capitalist lens sometimes, around like social entrepreneurship, around cultural entrepreneurship, around the sustaining of culture through these products that youth create, then it becomes more encompassing and people can kind of see themselves in it.
I love that. I love that. It looks like a lot of the products of Nalu Kai are also, they're social ventures. Is that something that they're required to do, is solve a social problem with their outcomes?
It wasn't. It wasn't. And then we realized all of them were. There's an amazing essay by Paul Graham, one of the founders of Y Combinator, where he talks about the best way to create a startup. And what you do is you look at your own technical capacities and skills, and you think about the spaces in which you live and create in, right? And for Bubs, the founder of Nalu Kai, that was kind of graphic design in the digital world, and there wasn't this marketplace for it. And he knew that, right? Like, he's one of the best commenters and posters on Dig. And so he understood, for people that understand in the early 2000s that there was a battle between Dig and Reddit, for this dominance in this one kind of internet technology, right? And so that's what we tell our students. I start everything with this exercise called Head, Heart, and Hustle. And I'm forgetting, I want to source it right now, but I'm forgetting the source. And I learned about it in the National Capstone Consortium, which all of your listeners have to go to. This year it's in Menlo, but it's usually in Boston. And look it up, please, the National Capstone Consortium. The single best amount of PD I've ever done in my entire life. Talk about finding your kind of group of innovators, right? They're all there. And Head is all of the things that that you know, or that you want to know, or that you have capacity in, or that you have access to. Heart are the things that fill your sails, that feed your soul, that make you angry and happy. And there's a lot of other beautiful prompts in this exercise. And then hustle is putting that into a product, or putting that into something that you're working on. And when you start with that exercise, people are reaching from the places that they know or understand, and start viewing themselves as burgeoning experts in those spaces too. And that's what we do at HPA, and that's what we've done at Nalu Kai over kind of the pre-work. And it gets students ready to have that experience. But it's about showing people that they do know things. It's about showing people that they do have an understanding that's unique. And then you're going to get some really beautiful ideas that come out of that.
Wow.
That's powerful. It's a really good idea.
15 pages of notes right now from this. This is awesome. Oh my goodness. I just looked, and we are pushing up on our timeline. We try to keep things around 30, 40 minutes because it's like drive time sort of, time frame.
Totally.
But, oh my gosh, we could talk to you for 3 hours. We should have done long form, because we always have to cut people at the end.
It'll be good. It'll be good though. It'll be really powerful.
Oh my gosh. Aaron, I'm just so appreciative that you had time for us today. And what you're doing is beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you. We're doing our Capstone Showcase April 24th, K through 12. So 5, 8, and 12 will be on the same day. And so it might be cool to talk like after that, talk about the things that have kind of emerged. Trying to think of things I didn't mention, but no, I think Nalu Kai and HPA have weaved back and forth, pretty beautifully. And the power of Nalu Kai is that we've been able to create it, right? Like, we determine the schedule, we iterate every day, we change the schedule based on the needs of students. This is really hard work, because when you're running a class like this, you're basically running like 10 classes at the same time if you have 10 students, because you're constantly meeting people where they're at. And it's almost like this writer's workshop, right? You're going back and forth, and you're checking in, and you're saying, what do you need? All right, let's connect you with this person. All right, you succeeded or dropped the ball. Let's go back in. Let's look at Asana or Trello for project management. Let's dive into, market research. And so it's rewarding, but it's difficult work.
I was wondering, before we go though, I want to can you uplift maybe one or two of the student ventures from Nalu Kai that you have been really excited about? I think having an exemplar like that really demonstrates the power of, it's a 10-day camp, and they're creating these ventures. So, I was wondering if you had one or two that really stood out to you as something that might be interesting for people to check out after this.
Oh, that's so hard.
Sorry, you can't list 20.
Yeah. And my it's like, it happens so often, like I have to find a sheet of paper that has all of this stuff written in on it.
I mean, maybe even if we want to preface it, they could be recent ones, and then it's not favoritism. It's just the more recent
Yeah. I think that Student Corner is really interesting. It's a space to showcase project-based learning. And it came out of a mentor and then him partnering with students that have come out of Nalu Kai, which I think has always been our model. It might not necessarily be the startup that's created by that team. Mm-hmm. It might be teams a couple months after camp coming together and creating something too. I mean, I think
that's more powerful, honestly.
I think Bubs Monsef's vision was that you create this ecosystem of entrepreneurs and that they constantly tap into each other. And as we grow, as Nalu Kai grows into a year-long program, it's creating those spaces where they can come back together too. There was an incredible startup that came out this year that's gaining traction. And the name is escaping me, so I might have to call back in and give it right back. But they were taking old Android phones, building an OS system for them, and then putting learning apps and games on them and providing them with youth that don't have access to them.
Wow.
Because one of the founders saw that a student whose mother had to work a lot didn't have access to this technology. And I mean, again, that's them kind of seeing their space. So many students of Hawaiian descent looked at sustaining culture through creating an app that looks at all the flora and fauna that are native to Hawaii and allows the user to identify and to name them. I mean, it's so interesting to see how they've taken their own lives and their own passions and turned it into something. And I wish I had everything right in front of me so I could give you the names.
No, I mean, I'm obsessed with the one with the Android refurbishing, because I can't imagine having that skill set and learning that quickly how to do that.
And I mean, they're doing insane work over 10 days. You know? And I think what we realized is it all culminates in this demo day and pitch to an authentic audience. People from the community, from the VC space. But what we realized is the pitch should not be for money, like a classic Y Combinator pitch or others. It should be for mentorship, because you're not going to build out a sustainable business usually in 10 days, right? Mm-hmm. Regardless if you're 40 or 50, and putting that pressure on teenagers is too much. Mm-hmm. So if you have this showcase and demo day that's more about, and we need help figuring out our next steps, and we need help thinking about who to partner with or who to connect with, I think we've realized that that's become a part of our identity too.
I love that. Ted kind of said something similar in his podcast talk about how expecting students to have a fully functional business at the end is often intimidating and can have the opposite effect of encouraging entrepreneurship because it scares them from it. But I love the idea of the ask being for mentorship to sustain that mindset moving forward. I think that's really powerful by itself.
And saying that if this doesn't go, take off, that's a part of, failure has become, it's cliche, but like fail early, fail often, and fail hard, right? Like failure leads to learning lessons. That is iterative development. And the minimum viable product, the MVP that's come out of lean startup methodology for us, is a core part of what we're doing now at HPA and what we're doing at Nalu Kai, right? Taking that prototype or that tool that allows you to actually see what your audience wants, or if there's traction, that leads to pivots and learning lessons along the way. And that's what education should be about.
That's exactly what education should be about. Wow. That's exciting. We love so much meeting awesome educators, because it just makes you feel good about the future. And, just seeing the possibilities of what it could be. Oh my gosh.
So many of us live in pockets of privilege, right? We're doing this in a space where someone would have gotten a deeply privileged education. When people are doing this in spaces that don't have lots of funding, those are the amazing educators, right? Like, and how we take these learning lessons and iterate them in spaces where someone might not have a MacBook Pro, where someone might not have a smartphone, right? Where someone might not have access to a mentor. that's gonna be the true test of if this works or not. And I would argue that, you have to free air it sometimes, right? Like you have to do this work in places where it's difficult to do.
Absolutely. And that's the driving mission of EntreEd, right? Is to scale all of the great pockets of things that are happening to a larger, so that they're happening everywhere, not in those pockets. Yeah.
We have met some of those teachers that are able to basically make something amazing out of nothing. And we've seen some really cool stuff come out of places like you said, where you wouldn't expect.
Where can people connect with you to learn more about your work? Maybe it's the websites, it's on Twitter, however you'd like to be connected would be great.
I'm more of an Instagram man now.
Okay, this is a rarity.
Yeah, I need to dive into Twitter. Otherwise, I'm a hypocrite when I teach it to my students. Schornado, SCHORNADO, what my students call me as well.
I love it.
You should start asking that on the front end.
I'm picture based. I'm like, the classic drawing the lines versus.
Well, you're a digital journalist. That makes sense.
Right.
Yes, it makes sense.
And then you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's a space that I still utilize. And then please follow us, Nalu Kai Foundation and Nalu Kai, NALUKAI. And then Aaron Schorn at gmail.com. I'm sorry, I'm throwing out all the unprofessional pieces here.
No, that's good. We will link everything as well for everyone that's listening, just because I'm sure they'll want to dive more into your work after this episode airs. So also for our listeners, welcome to the new year. This is our last recording of 2019. So we're in a new decade. So welcome. It's time to innovate. Let's go.
a perfect guest to have for our
new year.
Yeah, going into.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the ramblings of a dad who's about to leave.
I'm so excited to check out Schornado. I'm going.
And honestly, Nalu Kai's YouTube is where it's at. Like if you look at that content, it's all student created. All of the stuff we do is done by our media team, which is of Nalu Kai alums.
Yeah, it's awesome. The YouTube channels, that's where I watched a lot of the foundational things before I entered this conversation. And I can't tell you how impressive it is that it is knowing that it's student run. So
can I say one more thing that'll take like 30 seconds?
You can say whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay. So what has created Nalu Kai's identity is having alumni become a part of our leadership team. So Nick Wong was in the very first cohort. Nick Wong is a part of the application process. He helps run project management. He ran the pre-work for both camps that we did over the summer. Our media team has created of alums. It's about kind of walking the walk and talking the talk. And so by having our cohorts become a part of our administrative and operational identity, I think that's what makes us unique too.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Very good. Very good.
Thank you so much for letting me rant.
No. Well, thank you. Yeah, this has been really rewarding, and I'll let you know when it launches, but we appreciate your time.
Totally. Have a great rest of your holiday break or non-break.
Yeah. Thank you.
Happy New Year.